Shabbat Shalom, everyone. What a beautiful day to be in the house of Yahweh, right? Well, I hope that all of you have had a great week. Only one, amen. All right, right. How many miracles did you have in your life this week? You're alive. That's a miracle in itself, right? Amen. He is worthy, most definitely. You know, this the very breath that we breathe, the very time that He has called us to be in this life. What a more interesting time to be alive, right? All of the times that all of our forefathers looked forward to and thought maybe it might happen in their time and so forth. But you know, as I always have said, you know, we can say, yeah, we live in the latter days and all these types of things, and maybe it never happens in our life. But you know, when your life ends, that's the end, right? So that's what we need to focus upon, not necessarily the end time, but what about our end? Amen. Where will we stand in the judgment that great day? Well, bo is a very interesting word. It means to enter or to go or even to come. We see this word being used a lot in the scriptures. When the Father tells His servants to go someplace and do something, is He speaking to each one of us? Is He saying, bo, I want you first to come to me and then to go and spread the gospel where that you may find yourself in. It's spelled with a beit, vav, and olive. We want to look at these just to see if we can get a better understanding. Beit means house in Hebrew. The vav means a man or a nail or to secure. And the olive means head or strength. So could we say to secure the strength of the house? Or the Father coming and going to secure the house? Bo is where we get our English word via. That's interesting, isn't it? So as we go into this Torah portion, Exodus, starting in Exodus 10, we're going to zero in on one particular chapter here and hopefully really understand what the Father's really trying to show us as He showed the children of Israel in Egypt. One of the things that we see as we go on is that we're going to see time, how important time is. Sometimes we don't think about that, but sometimes we take every day for granted. You know, the sun comes up and we get up and we got things to do and here we go. But what about the time that the Father has set? Because Hasatan knows that the time of the Father is very important for us as a people. And that's why that he's tried to mess with it throughout history. So we're going to start with Exodus 10:1. And I may ask you, you may have it somewhere else in here, but what is the date today? Anybody know? Yeah? That's not a trick question. Could be. We say, well, it's January the 23rd, 2021. But is it really? In the Father's timetable, it's Shabbat, 11, 2020. We are still in that old year of 20. Wow. Everybody kept saying, man, I'm glad that year's over with. We can get on to better things. Well, it's still here, folks. So I want to zero in on that, and I told Rodney, I think from now, if every Shabbat we're going to put that date of what the Father's date is, because we need to retrain our minds to God's time. And as we study today, we're going to see how important that time really is. So we're going to read in Exodus 10:1 to start with. It says, And Yahweh said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that he might show these my signs before him, and that thou may tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's son what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am Jehovah. So here's a lesson that he's putting in. He says, I want you to burn this time into your memory, to share it with your children and their children and their children, to never forget this date, this time. And Moses and Aaron came in unto Pharaoh and said unto him, Thus saith Jehovah, Elohim of the Hebrews, How long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Well, that's a great question. A great question that we maybe need to not only ask ourselves, but look around in our society. How many people have really humbled themselves to the Father? You know, Solomon said, pride goes before a fall. Yes, it does. So, you know, we are a very proudful people, very proudful nation, but sometimes we need to humble ourselves as a people and as a nation to ask the Father what he wants us to do as a nation. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring the locusts into thy coast, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remains unto you from the hail, and every tree which grows for you and out of the field, and they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of all thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen since the day that they were upon the earth and unto this day. He was showing them something that they'd never seen before. I wonder, is he going to show us something in our days that we've never seen before? You know, that was the problem in Noah's time. They'd never seen a flood. So they thought, well, it couldn't be. It's never happened. Says, and he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's servant said unto him, How long shall this man be a snare unto us? These guys are pretty smart. They've seen all this stuff, and they're thinking, man, how long are you going to continue this? Let the men go, that they may serve Jehovah their Elohim. Don't you know that Egypt is destroyed already? And here we're going to have now locusts and destroy everything that grows. I guarantee you, I've seen it happen. When I lived in Waco, we had a garden. All of our plants was up, really nice, good, corn, all kinds of different things. We had infestation of grasshoppers about that long. And within less than 24 hours, there was nothing there. one little stick here and there sticking up. And Moses and Aaron were brought again unto Pharaoh, and he said unto them, Bo, serve Yahweh your Elohim, but who are they that shall go? So Pharaoh said, Go, Bo, serve Yahweh. But he put a condition on it, didn't he? So we know all of the plagues and things that took place. We want to fast forward to the 12th chapter. Chapter 12, 1. Because we see that eventually that Pharaoh relents. Doesn't really ever humble himself before Jehovah. But I guess he decided, well, man, this is enough. Enough is enough. It says, And Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month. And what's the name of that month? Abib. That's what we have named it, what man has named it. Because originally, all the months and all the days were only numbers. The first month. Okay? And that's what he's saying. This is the first month of the year to you. Speak you unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. Wow, I thought that the Passover was on the 14th. What's the deal here? It says, saying in the 10th day of this month. They shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household should be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make you your count for the lamb in the time of the month Abib. For in the month Abib you came out of Egypt. New beginnings, right?
Right. Yes, sir.
Why the 10th day? Well, as we read and study, we understand why that was the 10th day. They were to take the lamb and to put him up, bring him into their house. For what purpose? I mean, they're fixing to kill him 4 days later. Why would they want to bring this lamb into their house? They were to examine him to make sure that he was perfect, had no blemishes.
That's right.
And that what would happen with your children if you brought a small baby lamb into your house? What would happen? Be part of the family and they'd fall in love with it, and you're going like, man, what am I going to tell them? You go, oh, what's going to happen here? Because, all this is a picture of the Messiah. So in verse 28 says, Entreat Yahweh, for it is enough that there be no more mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go. And you shall stay no longer. And Moses said unto him, As soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands unto Yahweh, and the thunder shall cease. Neither shall there be any more hail, that they may know that the earth is Yahweh's. But as for thee and thy servant, I know that you will not fear Yahweh Elohim. And the flax and the barley were ruined, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was boiled. But the wheat and the rye were not ruined, for they were not grown up. So what season would this first month be in, and how can we prove it? Well, there's a couple of things. One is here is barley. When does barley ripen? Actually, there's usually two plantings of barley. You can have winter barley. Even though it's planted in the winter, it still doesn't come off until about 60 to 90 days later. You can plant it in the fall, in the spring, and have a barley. Because if you plant it early, it's going to lay there because it's too cold really to mature. It's in the seed there, and it is going to sprout, but not until it gets warm enough. So we know, just from an agricultural look at it, we see that this is the springtime is when this would come about. So let's see if there is other clues that we might look at to see what that we can see. So I want to back up just a little bit and say, so why do you think that Jehovah told Moses that this would be the beginning of the months to you? Have you ever thought about that? Why did he say, well, this would be the beginning of the year to you? Was he changing the beginning of the year? Had Israel lost sight of Jehovah's calendar while in Egypt? Had Jehovah ever given his people a calendar before? Does it matter about the calendar? Should it matter to Jehovah's people today? Is the calendar that most people follow today correct according to Scripture, or does it really matter? It's incorrect, isn't it? We're going to see some of the things, reason why it does matter. Is there anywhere in Scripture that answers all of these questions? Well, back to the beginning. There's our answers in the beginning. And that's what Isaiah, and that's what it said in other places. It says, in the beginning is the end. So everything that's spelled out is in the beginning. It says, in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. And Elohim said, let there be light, and there was light. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim divided the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first days. So we begin to see this is the beginning of evidently a calendar. Sounds like. And Elohim said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And Elohim made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. It was also. And Elohim called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So we got a pattern going here. And Elohim said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And Elohim called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he the seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. Never seen anything that God created that was bad. He said, this is good. And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit trees yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. Barley is called a grass plant. It's just like grass, or a cereal plant. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the light, and let them be from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. So when we know that we look up these words in the Hebrew, These seasons are more than them.
Yes.
Feast days.
Yep.
And for days and years. And so here's the calendar being started by telling you what a day is. Now he's going to tell you what these moads are. And also for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And Elohim set them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So the same pattern is being followed here. So if the day begins in the evening when it's dark, because that's when he began, if you remember in the first there, he said he began when the earth was formed without, it was void and formed without form, and there was darkness upon the earth. Then he made light. So this is the pattern of a day. This is the pattern of all creation. So then the question would be, on this fourth day, as the day begins in the evening in the dark place, what would be created to rule over that darkness? What he said, what did he say? The lesser light for the night. What is that lesser night? The moon. Because in reality, the moon doesn't have any light of its own. It's a reflection of off the sun. So then it would stand to reason that the moon was created before the sun. Because it was created at night to rule that night.
Right.
Right?
Come on.
All right. I know people look at it the other way, but I'm reading just what it says. So therefore you'd have a dark moon. So, this is God's calendar that he set from the very beginning. And he set these in motion because the moons regulate all of God's feast days, right? It's not regulated by the sun. It's regulated by the moon. The moon sets the beginning of the month and sets the beginning of the feast days. Okay? Just like we read in Exodus there, he says, on the 10th day, they put up the lamb, and on the 14th day was the lamb slaughtered. So without knowing when the month began, you would have a hard time figuring out when that day was. And if you were following the pattern that he set in Genesis, it would seem to me that you would begin with the dark moon as the first day of the month. Now that's just me. Okay? So we see all of this, and so we see, well, what has this really got to do with anything? What has this got to do with even us? But I want to show you a prophecy that is really showing you why and what we're going to happen, what has happened and what will happen. We're going to turn to Daniel 7:23. It says, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth. You remember the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream about, and Daniel gave him the interpretation of. And he told Nebuchadnezzar, says, you are this head of gold, and these are the kingdoms that follow. Okay? We're talking about the fourth kingdom, or the fourth beast here. Says, which shall be shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. Another shall rise after them, and he shall be a diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given unto his hand until a times, and a dividing of times. But the judgment shall set, and they shall take away his dominion to consume it, to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole earth, whole heaven, shall be given to the people of his saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Okay, we need to look at a couple of things here. One is times and laws. Well, when you look it up in the Hebrew, once again, it shows it same like the seasons, times are God's appointed times, his moedims, his feast days, okay, and the laws that concern that. It says that this one king that arises out of these 10 kings and subdues him, says he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and be given unto his hands until times, dividing of times. Times, dividing of time is 1260. Okay? Because you take 360 days for a year, times, dividing of time is 1260 years. Okay? That was the prophecy that he would be allowed to destroy God's people. He destroys or changes the laws and the moedims, and it would be given into his hand for 1260 years. Well, we might ask ourselves, well, has this happened? Is this a future prophecy, a past prophecy, or happening today, or does it really matter because it's in the Old Testament, you know? So it says, so as we go on, first we must ask, who is this fourth beast? When we're looking at this image, you will see that the fourth beast is Rome, okay? First you had Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then Rome, number 4. And he's depicted in this image as Arn, that he had legs of Arn, this image. Okay? So we're going to just see what the Scripture says and not take it upon ourselves. This is in Daniel 2:37. It says, Thou, O king, art a king of the kings, for the Elohim of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and esteem. And wherever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So then we don't have to just surmise it. God says it is. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all of the earth. And the fourth kingdom, or beast, shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. So now we've established that this fourth kingdom is Rome. Okay? And we see that the two legs there, and we can say that these two legs represent pagan Rome and ecclesiastical Rome. So, as just a reminder going back, we're going to, says, what does times and laws mean, and what are they, and who did this? Times in Hebrew is moed, set apart day, or feast days, and Shabbats, and the laws concerning all of them. So in 325 AD, we see a man named Constantine. He's a Roman emperor. He lived between 280 and 337 AD. And he changed Jehovah's Sabbath to Sunday. And later, under the popes, starting in 538 AD, replaced all of Jehovah's Sabbaths and feast days with pagan days of worship. At this time, the calendar in use for the known world then was the Julian calendar, made after Julius Caesar. Okay? So we fast forward a little bit. It says the calendar that is used today the world over is called the Gregorian calendar. And it's named after Pope Gregory, who was pope from 1572 to 1585 AD. Now we're getting closer to our time. And introduced his calendar in 1582 AD. It further cemented all of the pagan holidays into the calendar, also changing the beginning of the day from 12 noon to 12 midnight. Because under the Julian calendar, it was 12 noon was the beginning of the day. Can you imagine? So when it changed noon, it said, okay, it's a new day. So he says, well, that's a little inconvenient. So let's just start it at 12 midnight. Everybody will be asleep and they won't know it anyway. And he changed the beginning of the year from Abib to January. It's interesting as we go on, we're going to see some things that maybe you know and maybe you haven't really looked at. You ever heard April Fool's Day? Do you know what it means? What the origin of it was? It has to do with calendar. Because the new year had always began in the spring until he changed the beginning. And those that held on to the real calendar were called April Fools. And what does April Fools mean? It means something that you say is not really true, right? So that's the origin of that saying, and it's based in the calendar. So they were telling them, no, the calendar don't start here. You're a bunch of fools. The calendar starts down here, January. So, as we go on, so according to the prophecy in Daniel 7:25 that we just read, this was to take place and happen. This changing of God's calendar, it was prophesied of, and it was to last for 1,260 years, and his power would be broken. So if we take 538 AD, which is when the popes really got started, add 1,260 years to it, come to a date of 1798. Now we're getting closer to us. 1798. In 1798, what happened? Let me back up just a minute. What happened during this period of time? This period of 1,260 years is commonly known as the Dark Ages. Okay? Because people were killed because that they held on to God's true calendar and his true word. All of these things that took place during this period of time, but God said it was only last for 1,260 years, and so he brought some men upon the scene in the 1500s, starting with Martin Luther, that were protesting against the rule of popery in about 1530, actually. And we see many other reformers during that period of time. And out of that time comes the Protestant Reformation. Oh, yeah. Without the Protestant Reformation, all of these people would be totally out there. and being consumed with Catholicism and under the popes. So as these men propagated the truths that were in the scriptures and even began to print the Bible, because it was never available for the average person to read. It was written in Latin originally. Not originally, but it's Hebrew, but they transferred it into Latin because the people couldn't read Latin. How many people today can read Latin? You could probably on your hand or something maybe. But that was the whole thing, that you had to come to the Pope and to the priest, and he would tell you what it says. So God, in his provision, was bringing men and bringing things together with a look at the 1798. And even what really cemented this thing was what we call the French Revolution. If you've never read it, never looked at it, you need to read up the history on it. During the French Revolution, during that period of time, the French General Berthier, and Berthier was one of Napoleon's generals. Napoleon was down in South Africa. Berthier was up in France and Italy and so forth, and he took the Pope captive and put him in prison. And he broke the commands of the Pope over the state, because up to this period of time, only the king could rule underneath the Pope, and only could do what the Pope told them that they could do and not to do. So this French Revolutionary brought this really to a head, but it also brought a lot of bad things. Because during the French Revolution, they burned all of the books and all the Bibles. They closed all the churches, made them centers of reason. Do you know about how long that lasted? 3.5 years. Wow. And not only did they do that, but they changed the calendar. During the French Revolution, the calendar had 10-day weeks, not 7, 10 days. Once again, but it was in God's providence to break that power that was over them. Well, is there a prophecy that would take us from their own into our day, possibly? We can look back in history. These are historical events, and so it's not something that we've conjured up or that I looked up and said, oh, it must fit right there. These are historical events that you can look up on the internet or whatever. So we know that what God says, his word does not return to him void. That's right. It happens. Amen. So we have to look in Revelation to see if we can find this beast, this guy. So we go to Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. So this taking him captive and putting him in prison and breaking his hold was a wound that was inflicted upon him, but it didn't kill him, because it goes on. Because this is the same one, if we can see. You might say, well, This one beast has a leopard feet and bear and lion. Well, if you really do the studying in Daniel and in Revelation, you'll see that these animals also represent the same thing on the statue. Because Nebuchadnezzar was a lion. And it goes on, each nation has a different animal. So we know that these are the same. But he says his deadly wound was healed and all the world went after his beast. Well, has that happened is the question. How was the wound healed? Once again, we look at history. In 1929, 1930, Mussolini, the dictator of Italy, gave the Pope the city on the Seven Hills, which is called the Vatican today, and his money, his bank, his railroad, and setting him back to power, healing the wound, and the whole world is wondering after that beast. And they worshiped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Once again, 1,260 days or years. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against Elohim, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. Well, we can see because of this wound being healed, the Pope that come in that was elected in the 30s, the Pope that was put in prison is Pope Pius XI. Shortly after he was brought back, he died, and another Pope was brought in. And he took the name of Pope Pius XII. Pope Pius XII ruled during the period of World War II. And he is known as Hitler's Pope.
Yep. Yep.
So, this whole beast, his whole thing that he wanted to do was destroy God's people. And he made a pretty good job of it. 6 million Jews.
Yep.
Thousands of other people that was killed during that period of time. They first emptied all of the insane asylums and killed them. Then they went after all of the gypsies and rounded them up and killed them. And then they went after the Jews. So that's part of history, and that's part of our history.
That's right. That's right.
If we believe this whole thing about dispersion of the 10 tribes throughout all the world, and God is gathering them back, and you're being gathered, then you're part of Israel then, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, some of our ancestors was included in that 6 million Jews.
Yep.
And you must understand too, as we talked about before, the Jews has become synonymous with all of Israel, but that's not really the way it is, okay? As we looked at before, there's 12 different tribes, okay? So those so-called Jews that perished in Hitler's ovens and so forth were not just from the tribe of Judah.
That's right.
Okay? all of Israel. So, he's got a mouth that's blaspheming against Elohim and blasphemes his name. How do we blaspheme his name? You know, this is something we've talked about before. You know, how can you blaspheme his name? Or to take, don't take my name in vain. What does that really mean? To portray yourself as something you're not doing. Right? That's how you're blaspheming him. You're calling yourself a godly person and a Christian or whatever you might call yourself, and yet you're doing the very opposite of what he sets down for you to do. That's blasphemy. That's blasphemy, right?
Yep.
So, as we go on in Revelation, and all that dwelt upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, and of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. This was written a long time ago, about over 2,000 years, 23. This was written by John in the Isle of Patmos in about 90 A.D. So God, in his benevolence, told John says, write this down because this is going to happen. And I want my people to know what's going to happen.
That's right.
And yet we say, well, why, God, did you let this happen? Why?
Come on.
Well, why were they in captivity in Egypt? Why did they wind up in captivity in Babylon? Why did they wind up in captivity in Syria? All because of disobedience.
Yep. Come on.
So we've kind of done it to ourselves, in other words. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So do you have patience and faith? That in the end that all of this is going to be washed out. Those that take captive will go into captivity. Those that will kill will be killed. Do we have the patience to wait? Does patience possess your soul? Says, and I beheld another beast. So we need to find out what happened after this. This is old history now. It's happened in the 40s and 50s and so forth, 30s. So what's going on today? Beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. A couple of things interesting about this beast is he come up out of the earth. The other one come up out of the sea. Okay? What is in prophetic language, particularly in Revelation, sea is notated as people, multitudes, crowds of people. So this other beast come out of people, in other words, out of the nations and things around. This beast comes up out of the earth, some place where that maybe there wasn't a bunch of seas or people. And he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So who is this guy? Can we really say? I think we can. The only nation that come up out of an earth is the United States. Didn't come up out of a group of people that was already here. was a nation that was brought forth on new ground. It says he has two horns like a lamb, but he speaks as a dragon. Where in the world is there any military might that's mightier than USA? None. He can speak like a dragon. As we go on, you're going to see that he can even call fire down from heaven. So he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Do we maybe see that happening? And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Well, we're seeing some of these things take place. Ecumenicalism is what they call it. It's the bringing together of all denominations. But it's all bringing them back to the mother church, and that mother church is Catholicism. We've seen these things taking place. I understand that in this year there's going to be a conclave there in the Vatican, and they're going to rescind the order to excommunicate Luther. So what does that really mean? I mean, we've already seen it in the film that I showed a couple of years back, where that all of these leaders of Kenneth Copeland's ministry and a lot of other ministries all come together. And envoy, a man from the Pope, come and talk to him and told him, he says, this whole division was over whether you're saved by grace or in faith, or whether you were saved by works. And so we agree with y'all, it's by faith. So there's no more protest, there's no more Protestantism. Y'all are all Catholics. And they all stood up and clapped and raised and went on.
6 months later, that guy
Yes.
in
Yes, he was killed about 6 months later. But he had all of these leaders of so-called Christianity agreeing with him that they were all Catholics. And the protest was over. That's the problem. The Protestant churches in our land are no more Protestants. They're no more protesting. Have you ever heard a sermon like this out of Daniel, Revelation, and saying there's the beast and so on and so forth? No, you'll never hear it taught from a pulpit. The very idea that they worship on Sunday, the day that the Pope changed it to, and in their own words, and you can read it, it says they pay homage to us in spite of themselves, because they say that we have the authority to change the day from Shabbat to Sunday. Well, these are some of the things that are coming. We even saw in the election this year, Biden is a Catholic. And he had one of the priests come and pray the benediction for him at the inaugural speech. So something that really interesting happened. I don't know if y'all watched the inauguration or not. First of all, Kamala was sworn in as vice president. Sworn in by a woman Supreme Court Justice, Soter, I think's her name. And she swore her in. She took the oath on one of her Bibles. And I listened to everything that was in that oath. And then later, they had the swearing in of Biden by Supreme Court Justice Robert, what he is the head justice. And the oath that he took was not the same oath that she took. You need to go back and listen to it. And one of the main thing that really struck me was in that oath it says to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That was not in his deal. And I thought, wow, what does that mean? Well, we've been reading about an enemy of the United States, an enemy of all of our people, the world over. If you don't take an oath to defend the Constitution against that enemy, is that telling? Is it really telling, or did somebody forget? I mean, this is the Justice of the Supreme Court. He was saying the words, and he was repeating the words. It's interesting. Says, as we go on here, says, and deceive them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they shall make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And we think, well, what miracles are we talking about? Well, we're going to see miracles. That's why it says that if it were possible, the very elect would be deceived, because there are going to be miracles. There have been miracles. What about the miracle of Fatima? Have you ever read that? There was 30,000 people standing in an open field, it pouring down rain, and they all saw the image, or saw, supposedly, Mary speaking to these children and gave them supposedly prophecies that would come forth. And at the end, it quit raining, the sun was shining, and the ground was totally dry. He had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause, that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he caused all, both small and great, and poor, free, and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand and in their forehead, or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So, folks, that's what we're looking forward to. Gee, crickets, it's already over. It's already been an hour, hasn't it? Pardon me? Oh, lunch can wait. Okay. Well, there was a couple of things I would like to say. Let's go on to let's look at this Gregorian calendar. You know, it's a solar calendar, solar only. God's calendar is a solar and lunar calendar together. But Pope Gregory, he knew that if he took the lunar out of it, he would do away with all of God's feast days. You would lose track of when they are and what they are, and so it's only a solar calendar. Now there's some people on the internet now that are claiming that God's only calendar is a solar calendar. How can that be? Cannot be. So it's with 12 months of anywhere from 28 to 31 days each, instituted in 1582. The Gregorian calendar continued to employ the Julian months, which have Latin names and irregular numbers of days. January has 31 days and is from the Latin meaning month of Janus, the Roman god of gates, doorways, beginnings, and endings. So you see why that he began in January, the beginning of the year. And if you've ever seen a picture of that God, he is a two-faced God. He has a face on each side of his head. Look back, look forward. He's a gatekeeper. He's of the doorways. February is 28 days, common 29 in the leap, from Latin Februus, month of Februa, the Roman festival of purging and purification, cognate with fever, the death god, and purifying, and pi is the word for sulfur, so burning of sulfur. March, Martius, month of Mars, the Roman war god. April, from Latin Aphelius, of uncertain meaning, but usually derived from some form of the verb apparite, to open, or the name of the goddess is Aphrodite, or what else did we see in April? Easter. In this calendar, Easter is always in April because it's Estar, the goddess of all of this. All right, so as we move on, in May, Maius is the month of Maya. It is a goddess of vegetation goddess who also means great, and in the English means major. June, from Junus, month of Juno, the Roman goddess of marriage, childbirth, and rule. How many people have been married in June? It's a very, very popular month to be married in, is in June. Wonder why? Without even knowing it, we've been so programmed. July is from Julius Caesar. The month of Caesar's birth is instituted in 44 BC as part of his calendar reforms. August comes from Augustus, the month of Augustus, instituted by Augustus in 8 BC in agreement with July, and from the occurrence during the month of several important events during his rise to power. September, from Latin, meaning from its position in the Roman calendar before 153 BC, because it was the seventh month. It was the seventh month in God's calendar. It's not the seventh month anymore, but it still holds that name September, which means 7. And October, the same thing with it. It means 8. It was also the 8th month in the position of the Roman calendar before 153 BC. November means 9 from its position, and December means 10. So, so here we go. It is out there for all to really to read and to study. I hope that you receive something by being here, and as you read the New Testament, particularly in Matthew and different places, you see that Yeshua knew the date, knew when he was supposed to arrive and come into Jerusalem, because that date was the 10th day of Aviv when he rode into Jerusalem on the donkey. And that was all according to another prophecy saying that, to the daughter, that your king would come in lowly riding upon a coat of an ass. Why did he come on that day, the 10th day? And if you'll read on, it goes on, it says, from that time on, they took him through all kinds of tests. Well, what about this and this and this? Where'd you get this authority? What about this? Tell us what you would do in this case. Even the woman that was married to all of the different men. Who would his wife be in the resurrection? They were inspecting him, testing him to see if he would really qualify as that lamb. Unbeknownst to them what they were really doing, I guess. Maybe some did. But they were questioning him and inspecting him on everything it had to do with the law. And of course, he passed with flying colors. So, Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Thank you for watching a teaching from Emet HaTorah. If you are ever in the Odessa area, we would love to welcome you to our Shabbat service, 11 a.m. every Sabbath. For more information or for more teachings, feel free to find us on the web, www.emethatorohodessa.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Thank you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.